and all of you, ladies and gentlemen who are present here today. It's a matter of great happiness that we are meeting despite some issues which cropped up in India for last few days, as you would have followed up. It is to our resilience and strength that we still want to focus on India's growth and development, and so that this meeting is very important. It's a signal that we want to go on. I would just like to mention that when the ghastly incident of terrorist attack happened in India on 22nd April, Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen was one of the first world leaders who came out in support of India. She said that Denmark condemns terrorist incidents against India, and Denmark stands with India. So that's the spirit of India-Denmark partnership. You would have followed that last few days have been very tense, and the warlike situation between India and Pakistan. And unfortunately, these kinds of developments lead to some kinds of consequences which cannot be avoided. So these would be, say, shipping, green energy, power, of course, health, smart cities, water management, power to X, hydrogen. All these kinds of fields, which are very, very important, have been identified between the two governments, and the respective government ministries and agencies sit together in a governmental format to discuss that how we can do best to improve this partnership. We know that Danish companies have one of the best technology.
Yes, I can do that. Please. Ambassador, His Excellency, presents India's
Danish government is already a partner with the River Ganges Authority, and we started to look at technologies which were not already present in India and how we could bring them to the market. That was the starting point. And I can remember 2017, 2018, when we, in a forum like this, we had lots of technology companies from around the world, and they identified 2 or 3 key problem sets to introduce their solutions to India. One of those problem sets was how do we sort of break into the market when government is there. And we started to create a solution set where both government and private sector would come together, private sector from around the world, not just within India, to then fast track these solutions to market. And the government gave the mandate to seek
company called Indiavision, and we are making some IoT-based water sensors. Excellent presentation, and I think very much required, and I'm sure we will get a lot of interest. I have some very specific questions with respect to the verification process. So from step 1 to step 5, which is commercial demonstration, can you tell us what is the timeline and what kind of an investment a small company might have to incur? Sure. And secondly, you mentioned in the EOI that there is an RFP. So is it again a procurement process like what we are trying to sort of circumvent under this Bharatiya program? I suppose it's not the same kind, right? So if you could clarify. Thank you.
So I'll take your second question first. RFP is bilateral, right? It's between us, right? We're asking you to put in a proposal, but we know for a fact there are more than a dozen of you already interested in biogas sector, just from Denmark alone, right? Now, how do we sift through that? Can we create a dozen projects? Absolutely, right? Provided, but what we don't want to do is lots of Me Too's, right? What we want to do is being able to bring the very best of what you have to offer, what's not already in India, right? That's really the idea. So RFP is more bilateral, but in the instance there are multiple providers of a similar solution, then either we will create multiple projects on our side, or if we have to select one, then of course we have to have that negotiation. It's not a tender process, it's a bilateral commercial negotiation. So that's the second question. The first one is on the timeline. Timeline is very much dependent on what commercial pathway you choose. If you say, I want to just do licensing of the technology, then the timeline is very, very fast, right? We agree the terms of the license, right? What that is, then we'll take care of everything else on the Indian side. Typically, that's a 4 to 6 month process. Right? If you say, no, I want to do a joint venture, or even much more advanced, I want to set up a subsidiary in India, then that very much is dependent on you. Because when the panel is evaluating, they're evaluating on 2 criteria. One, yes, your TRL scores, but also on your CRL scores. Because no government wants to issue a tender and then there's no bidder for the tender because you're not commercially ready. So the panel says, yes, you are commercially ready. So how fast you get there is very much reliant on you. Some people have gotten there in 3 months, others have taken 3 years, right? So, but the faster you move, the faster we will move. Is there a cost? Again, depends on what's the commercial model. If you just license it, there's a very tiny cost because the government panel will come, travel to the site, interact with you. But if you say, look, it's a joint venture, then your Indian partner is also co-investing in the project. For us, our income stream all comes from the project. So if the project doesn't generate an income stream, we don't make any money. So our interests are all aligned in getting that project successfully off the ground. And typically what happens is, so I'll give you the example on the farming project. Very surprisingly, we raised about 700,000 euros, but from an Indian greenhouse assembling manufacturing company. Right? And that's a very interesting insight that we got, that most of our investments for the first project, significant majority of it is coming from Indian OEMs, Indian equipment manufacturers, because they want to get on to the next wave of technological innovation. So they're very happy to contribute financially into the project. The tire recycling, exactly the same thing. That pump, which produces, for those of you who understand pressure, that pump's generating pressure, water at a pressure of 4,000, 5,000 bar. Right? It'll cut human beings in half in that kind of pressure. So only very limited, there are only 2 or 3 manufacturers in the world, and they came in, that pump alone cost €1 million. So they contributed the pump as their equity investment into the project. So a lot of it is based on what is your commercial model of entering into India. We're also going to request to the Danish government if there is a construct. So it's like the Slovenian government on the back of the satellite project has now assembled about 10 Slovenian companies, and they're creating a funding layer which will go to the companies and then onward into the project in India. So maybe there is a construct with the Danish government also that we can create, so and we can have those dialogues.
You mentioned a few times that you're looking for technologies that are not present in India. What if we have technologies that are already present but have an improved performance? Would that be relevant for this kind of projects?
Very much so, because so if the improve, we know of Aquaporin, you've interacted, you've engaged with us in the past, and so in many cases, so like in wastewater treatment system, you would know of MBBR, and so we've just onboarded an MBBR technology which says we shrink the land footprint by 60%. We shrink the energy footprint by 50%, right? So it's not that MBBR is not present in India, it's an massive improvement on the technology. There's a specialist catalyst company that is saying we design catalysts to recover phosphates from wastewater. We design catalysts to recover chromium from wastewater, or whatever we want to recover. So again, It's not that catalysts don't exist, but they can do so efficiently and much better. So the answer to your question is yes.
A lot of knowledge and services that can also be transferred within these spaces, which we are already doing as a part of the India-Denmark Green Strategic Partnership through the ministries. But some tools, some software, some services, is that also something that you can facilitate?
Yeah, so I will say, give you the example of the Slovenian system. It wasn't just, when we started the partnership, it was just a software system, right? Essentially, that would be offered. But the knowledge that comes with it, so if you want to scale up, you'll have to go through the public procurement. Now, you know that, maybe you don't, for the benefit of others. So if you are under a certain threshold, or as an international consulting company, you have to be over a certain threshold, $15 million equivalent, for you to qualify to bid directly. Under that threshold, you must have an Indian presence. Right? So how do we channel that know-how? So we productize the knowledge, whether it's a software system, whether it's data or data, and plus the advisory that comes with it. And it's much easier for a government to procure. I'm not saying government does not procure, or private sector does not procure advisory capabilities and capacities. So long as we can productize and package that, like the examples I gave. But if you say we're a general consulting company, engineering consultancy like Mott MacDonald or Arup or others, DHI, then our touch point will be on the project rather than a general purpose facilitation. So if there is an area, again, I'll give you another example. There's a Norwegian company that says we specialize in using specific geo scanning using LIDAR. Right? So when you're putting big transmission lines, long roads, long pipelines, you want to be able to assess the terrain very quickly. If you travel 2,000 kilometers, it'll take months for you to assess that. So these guys have developed a specialist advisory and consultancy, but we've been able to say, let's productize that, right? And that became the interface which the government and other private sector agencies are very happy to procure.
Tak fordi du så med for at holde dig opdateret. Husk at trykke på abonner-knappen og give os en tommel op.